Okay, so if there is no other question, let's go to edge detection. And I think this is going to be more interesting than filtering. And of course, we're going to use filtering for this. So we will see like what edge detection is, why we need edge detection, and what are like some of the challenges. And then finally, how to detect edges. And today, I think we are already 5:15, so we have half an hour. Let's see how much we can cover. So definitely, I will try to cover this Prewitt and Sobel filter, and then we will discuss like this more advanced techniques, Marr-Hillrich and Canny edge detector in the next lecture. All right. So what is edge detection? So edge detection is like if you have an image, you have intensity values at different pixel locations. So how those pixel locations are changing as you move from one pixel to another. So if you have very sudden changes in those intensities, it means there is an edge. So you want to detect those kind of edges. Now, those edges might represent like some important semantic meaning which is there in the image, might give you some shape information, and of course like those will be borders. Those could be borders of an object, or they could be something else as well. It doesn't have to be border of an object. And another good thing about edges is like if you have extracted edges from an image, you can store that in a more compact form as compared to the original image, because you need like far way less values to store, because only your edges will have some intensity values, and rest of the image will be completely black, so which you can totally ignore. Now this is like one nice example. We have this Lena image, and if we perform edge detection on this image, we can see like you have these nice edges. And in this case, if you just observe this edge over here, you can see like it's for a cat. So it has some semantic meaning, and it's also like, as I said, they can represent border of an object. So this edge is like border of this cap, because above this you have a background. And but that's not always true, because all these like if we talk about these here, I mean these are not borders, right? These are just part of the hair. And again, when you have this the whole face, so it's not necessarily like a border. So why do we like observe edges in images? There are many different causes, many different factors. So let's consider like the simple image where we have drawn the edges of this bottle, and we also have this nice shadow here. So this is the first edge here. Now, if the surface normal is changing, so if you have any discontinuity in surface normal, so then you will observe edges. So for example, in this cap, on the sideways, the normal direction is this one, right? But as you move like to the top of this cap, the normal is changing. Now it's like upfront. So whenever you have change in this normal along the surface, you will observe edges. You might have discontinuity in depth. So if the depth is changing, so for example, at this location, so this object is like in the front, right? And background, you don't know how far the background is. So definitely there will be a change of depth at this location. So in this case, you will observe this edge. Now, it could be like you have an edge, but there is no change in depth. So that's also true. For example, just observe this particular edge. So you have an edge here, but depth of both these regions, it's almost identical. Okay. Now, other causes of edges, like you could have change in color. For example, if there's like, let's say something written over in this bottle, then there should be like some change in color. So in that case, you will observe edges. And there can be edges when, in this case, you have shadows, right? So for the shadow, you will see some edge. But actually in real world, I mean, there's nothing down there. I mean, it's the same object, it's just the shadow is like casting over that. And because of that, you are seeing this edge. So there can be many other reasons for which you are seeing edges in images. Now let's see what are the different types of edges. Now we have step edge, we have ramp edge, and roof edge. So step edge is when the intensity of the neighboring pixels is changing drastically. So in this case, it was completely black, and all of a sudden it turns like white. So there is a sudden change. We call that step edge. You can have ramp edges. So you have like smooth black, then it's like gradually changing to white. And if you plot this like in a 1D curve based on the intensity, you can see that the intensity is gradually increasing and then staying the same. So that's ramp edge. You can have roof edge. So this is like again continuous black, then it turns white, and again goes back to black. And you can represent this like as a roof here in 1D curve. Now the important question is why. I mean, it's fine when we have edges and images, but why do we need edges? Why do we need like to detect those edges? Why is it useful? So as we like discussed earlier, they give you useful information about what objects are present in the image, and it could also give you semantic meaning. It could give you structure of those objects which are there, and you can use all that information to recognize objects. And that's what we want to do in computer vision. You can also use that for recovering the geometry of the objects. So for example, so this is not an image, right? It's just a sketch, and it's only giving you edges, maybe from an image. So, but still, like just using the edges, you can easily interpret this as an eye. So it can be used for object recognition. Similarly, you can detect this as a nose. Of course, when you don't have any context, don't have any colors, it's just the shape which is defined, which you can detect. Again, you can easily, so this is nothing, right? These are just some bunch of edges, but you can easily say these are like teeth. This is a tongue. So no color information, just edges. And you can also recognize complex objects. So it's very easy like to recognize using just edges that this is a plane and this is a house, and both of these are like very complicated objects. So that's why we need edge detection, and it can be used in like a lot of computer vision applications where we need semantic meaning, or we need structure of the object that is present in the image. And of course, like if you want to recognize those objects. Now let's see like some more examples in real world images. So if you take a patch from this particular location, you can see that in the bigger picture, I mean, you can easily ignore those edges, right? I mean, they are not very meaningful, but still you have those edges there. So if you're changing from, so it's just like, I think corner of a wall. So you have an edge there, and I think this is again a corner of a wall, and it's like it's more of a step model, because I think because of the shadow, you don't have enough light in this particular region. So again, the indoors, because of I think lack of light, you can't see it. Again, you have an edge. Now another example, it's just corner of the wall. And in this case, it's a plane surface. So it's not actually edges in terms of the objects present, but it's only like the way the light is getting reflected at these locations because of the colors we have in this floor. So we are getting edges. Now, we know that if there is a rapid change in the intensity, then we will observe edges. Now, if you plot this change in intensity in terms of a function, you will see something like this. So white is like high, black is low. So as you move from this point to this point along this red line, this is showing like the intensity at each pixel location. So this is all white, and that is represented here. But as you move from this white region to black region, gradually the intensity is going down. So you can observe it here. It's going down, and it's all black again. And again, it's coming up, and then it's the same. So we have an edge here. We have an edge here. And if you look at this profile, intensity profile, then you can see that the intensity changed. So this is like one of the model we discussed, and I think ramp model. So you have an edge at this location, you have an edge at this location. So how can computers detect this edge, these edges? And as a human, we can easily say that, okay, we have an edge here and an edge here. But so let's see, if you compute derivative of this function, so the function is intensity profile of this line, then if you compute derivative of this function, what's going to happen is, now derivative is, as we discussed, it gives you slope of a line. Okay, so here the slope is 0, and as you move forward, the slope is gradually increasing, or you can say like decreasing because it's in the other direction. So if the slope is like this, that we consider positive, but the slope is in this direction, we consider that it's negative. That's why it's going down. So as you move from this point to this point, the slope is increasing in the negative direction. Okay, and as you reach at this location, I think the slope will be highest. So you can draw like the tangent to this curve. So tangent will give you the slope. That's like rate of change, and that's how you compute derivative. So at this particular location, the gradient will be highest. So that's the peak here. And again, as you move forward, again, the slope will like starting to get low. So the same value will repeat because the function is symmetric around this point. All right. And again, the slope is going to get 0. So same will repeat for this one. In this case, like the intensity is increasing, and that's why the slope will be in this direction, and that's why it's positive. So you can easily use derivative to detect edges. So whenever there is like peak in your derivative, you can represent that as edges, and we will see like how we will use that for actual images. So yeah, edges correspond to extreme of derivative. Now let's plot like the intensity profile for this red line in this image, and this is like giving the intensity. Okay, so as you move from this location to this location, that's how it's changing. So if you look at this edge, you can see that the intensity is going down, and it's like at this location when it was completely black. And if you compute derivative of this curve like we did for the previous one, you will get something like this. And all these peaks here, they kind of represent edges in this particular line. Okay, and so this is as you can see, like this is just computing edges for this particular line, not like the whole image. But of course, like if you do this derivative for the whole image, and we know how to do derivative for images, you can get edges for the full image, and that's what we will see today. Now, let's see, like if we have some kind of noise, how this edge detection can be challenging. Now, if we have noise, then if you compute derivative, this is something which you will get. And why this is happening? Because if you have noise in your pixels, then when you move from one pixel to other, because there will be some noise, you will already see like change in intensity. So if the noise is too much, then if you change, like move from one pixel to the next, you will always see like a high gradient. And that's what's happening here. And it's very hard to detect like where the edges are, even if you have a very small amount of noise. Okay, so let's look at like this curve again. So it's a ramp function. So you have an edge here. Now, if you add some noise, so at a higher level, mean you're not changing the function. It's still like you have low values here, then it's increasing, and then high values here. So you have noise, and the noise is not that huge. You're just adding like some perturbations to each pixel values. But if you compute derivative of this function, this is what you will get. And earlier you were getting a nice peak at this location when you computed the derivative. But look at this, I mean, this is useless, right? You can't detect any edges. But as a human, if you look at this particular plot, you can easily say, okay, here's the edge. But computers can't do that. All right. So that's a big challenge. Now, different filters respond strongly to noise. Again, if we were going to use median filter, that would have been very effective, but it's a nonlinear filter. and it's not efficient. That's why we can't use it. Now the question is, what can we do about it? So one easy solution is we can try smoothing the image first. Okay, so that's like our image, which is, I mean, we're just considering one line of the image right now. We'll see like how we can extend this to images. So again, we have noise perturbations. And let's say we have a filter. So this is a nice Gaussian filter. And we know that Gaussian filter can be used for smoothing. We saw that earlier in the previous lecture, right? So if we use this Gaussian kernel to smooth the signal, we'll have to perform convolution or correlation. So this is something which you will get. So again, so how this is going to work is you will place this filter starting from this location. You will move this filter along this direction. And again, you will do element-wise multiplication and add up those values, take the weighted average, and that's the resultant value. And this is the result. And you can see that all the noise is gone because of that smoothing. And now if you compute derivative, you will get a nice peak here, and you can still detect the edge. So there was a question in the last lecture why we need like filtering, why we need convolution, where this will be useful. So this is like one nice use of filtering where we have noise in our input signal, how we can like avoid that noise and still detect edges. Okay, so there's a question from Furkan, but using median filter would be better here. You mean like using median filter in place of Gaussian filter? Yeah, of course, I think not in this particular case, because in this case, you don't have outliers. You have very small perturbations. So I don't think like if you use median filter or mean filter, the results will be different. So in this particular case, I think the output will be almost identical, because you can easily visualize that if you take like these set of values and if you compute the average, you will still get something like this, like at the same level, and median will be almost similar. So median would have helped if you would have like outliers, like if your noise would be like much bigger. So let's say one of the pixel value was somewhere here. Then your median filter or your Gaussian filter won't work. In that case, median filter will be more effective. So in this case, the noise is, in this noise, you don't have many outliers. Okay, I hope that answered your question. Now, so earlier we saw like we can use filtering to do edge detection. And by filtering, I mean like computing the derivative. And in this case, we know that if there is noise, we'll have to first perform smoothing and then filtering, and then we can do edge detection. And that's exactly like the process which we will follow like in all the filters we are going to talk about in edge detection. And okay, so again, yeah, just look for peaks in the output that will give you edges. Now the question is, can we optimize this further? Because this is like two-step process. You have your input signal, you have your kernel, you have to first perform smoothing, and then you have to perform this convolution. So can you save like one extra step? And the answer is yes, because your convolution is differentiable. So if you're convolving your f function using g, if you take the derivative, you get something like this. And so let's see like how this is going to save one step for you. So this is your input signal, and you just have to compute the derivative of your filter. So if your input filter was Gaussian, so the derivative will be something like this. All right, and then you just have to do the convolution operation. So just do convolution between these two signals and you will still get the same result. Okay, so some of you might be wondering like how we get like this operation from this one. And so note that this is not like matrix multiplication or vector multiplication, in which case you would have to use like chain rule. You would have another term where you will have g and then differentiation of f. So this is convolution operation. So we are not going to prove this identity here, but like, yeah, that's like how we can optimize this one extra step. Now, another question will be how we get like this derivative of Gaussian. So yeah, let's try to discuss that. So this is also a Gaussian here, right? It's a nice Gaussian. And the way we get this derivative is as you move from left to right, your slope is increasing, right? And your slope is increasing, the slope represents derivative. That's why your derivative is increasing, okay? And when you reach at this location, then your slope will start going down because it's going to saturate at this peak point. So that's why it's going down. And at the top, your slope will be almost zero, this flat horizontal line. That's this particular location. And then again, your slope is going to increase, but in the negative direction. So it's like symmetrical coming down. Again, at this point, it will be like maximum. Then just you can finish it like when you reach here. So that's how you can, like a good way to interpret your different, your derivative of a Gaussian. And this is like very useful derivative, which you will see later on. Now, so we saw that smoothing can help you determine edges when you have to perform filtering. Now, smoothing can be used like with using different size filters. And here it's showing like if you increase the size of the filter, then you will see like more blur when you have a bigger filter. And this we have already seen, like I think in the last lecture where we were trying to increase the shape of the box filter. So box filter, that's like another smoothing operator, but Gaussian is better than box filter, so we will use that. Okay, so it's going to blur edges. Now, before moving on to like how to perform edge detection in actual images, we'll talk about like how we will evaluate edge detection. So how will we know like whether we are doing good edge detection or it's not good edge detection? So as like for all the algorithms, we have some evaluation metric. We do have for edge detection as well. And for example, this circle shows like the number of edges which were determined by your algorithm. And then this red circle is like the edges which were actually in the ground truth, which were the true edges. Okay. So the intersection of these two circles, which is this region, this is called true positive, which means that whatever your algorithm predicted, which of those edges were actually true. Okay, because you are intersecting this blue circle with red. So that's true positive. And then there will be true negatives, which mean that you didn't say these pixels were edges, and which was true. So it's like outside your blue circle. Those are called true negatives. Then you will have this slight curve here, like a slight region here, which is outside the red circle. So these pixels you said were edges, but in fact they were not. So which is called false positives. So you said mean those are positives, but that was a false claim. That's why the name false positive. Okay. And then this is a region like here from the red circle, which is not covered by the blue circle. And this is called false negative. So when you said that the blue ones are like the edges, you actually ignored these pixels. So they were actually true edges, but you said mean those are negatives, and therefore the term false negative. Now we have two different measures, precision and recall. So precision will be like this formula. You computed true positive over the actual ground truth, and you have recall, which is like true positive over ground truth. So let me try to explain the interpretation of these two. So precision means whatever you predicted, how much of that was true. Okay, so RM is like all the true edges, and true positive is like whatever you predicted true. So it's like the portion of your detections which are correct. That's called precision. And recall is how many of the total edges which were true you predicted. So which is like you predicted true positives, right? This TP. But how many, in fact, the total number of edges, those were there, that was the ground truth, the red circle. So precision is kind of trying to explain if you are correct in your prediction or not. So if you're predicting something, whether that's right or not. But recall is how much of the pixels you actually predicted which were true. So that takes into account like if you're missing something, and it could be like there are 1,000 edges, but you predicted only 5 of them. So, and all 5 of them were correct. It means you have a very high precision, but your recall was very bad, because out of 1,000 you predicted 5. It means you missed like 995 edges. So that's the interpretation of precision and recall, and we can use these to draw a ROC, this precision recall curve, which is used for like evaluating edge detection. Now, these are some general criteria like which can be used for a good edge detection. So we want to find all real edges. We want to ignore noise and other artifacts. The localization should be good, which means like it should be as close as to the true edges. And for each edge point, we only want to predict one, not multiple edge points. So for example, this is like if this is a true edge, and if you predicted something like this, it means that it's a very poor prediction, because it's not very close to like the ground truth, and it's like very scattered, and that might happen due to noise. And this is like poor localization, because the edge might have been in this location, but we detected at this location. So even though your edge is good, but it's not at the right location. And this is like covering this last point, you are predicting too many edges. So in this case, like you should have predicted only this one, not this one. So again, this is not good. Now, this is like the precision recall curve, the two metrics which we discussed in the previous slide. And this is like the result showing the methods which were developed from, I think, 1965 to 2008. And this is like before deep learning came into picture. And we are going to discuss these Sobel edge detector, Prewitt, Hillreth, and Canny edge detector. And these were like the first ones in 1968-70. And this one is, I think, 1986. That was a big breakthrough. So you can see here that this green dot is showing like human performance when we asked humans to draw edges in the images. And this is like the best we have. So the best algorithm, or which we can say that is perfect algorithm, will have a curve something like this. So the precision will always be 1, and it will pass this location. So the bigger area under the curve, the better the algorithm is. So in this case, you can see that the area under the curve, it's pretty small. So it's a bad algorithm, and it's improving over time. So this red curve here, that's like showing 0.7 FN score. So that's kind of a better algorithm as compared to the others. So you can see like even humans are not perfect. Now, I think we are out of time. So we are going to cover this Prewitt and Sobel edge detector in the next lecture. And along with these two, we'll also cover Canny edge detector and the Hillreth edge detector. So any quick questions? We have like 1 minute left. So question from Jingtai is like, what's the homework one will be? So as I like described in the first lecture, I think, So each homework you will have 5 questions, and they will be simple questions like true and false or fill in the blanks. And so I think it will be released at 6. You can have a look. The questions are not that difficult, but they are just picked from the lecture slides. And it will be due on Monday midnight. Okay. Now, there is another question from Tushar. He's saying, not regarding the lecture, when is the main project due? So main project, you mean like the programming course project? So that will be due when the semester ends. I think it's 6th of December or 3rd of December. So whenever the semester is ending, that will be like the deadline. So that was a question, Tushar. Okay. All right. So if you have any more questions, just drop. You can drop me an email, or you can come to the office hours, or you can put the questions on the discussion forum on web courses, which is like quite empty. So I would like to see like more questions there, more discussions there, and probably mean we are just covering basics these days, so you might not have enough questions. But once we start like going in detail in deep learning, I think then you might have more. So that's fine. So another question from Sunil, like for the main project, can we create groups? Yeah, you can. So you're not attending the lectures, right? We have discussed this, I think, in the first lecture. So you can create groups. Maximum, I think you can have 4 students, and you can do individual projects as well. So that's totally up to you. All right. So we are out of time. So let's end it here, and I will see you on Tuesday next week. Bye.